वेलकम बैक नाज़रीन, आप देख रहे हैं बिजनेस बाजार। ब्रेक में जाने से पहले जिस तरह से मिस्टर लेनहंट हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं और अल-गाजी ट्रैक्टर्स के पाकिस्तान में चेयरमैन भी हैं और इसके अलावा प्रेसिडेंट हैं अल-फुत्ताम ऑटोमोटिव्स के। ऑटोमोटिव यूनिट ग्लोबली जिस तरह से अल-फुत्ताम का परफॉर्म कर रहा है, नीडलेस टू से जिस तरह से हमें मिड ईस्ट में प्रेजेंस देखने को मिलती है कैटेगोरिकली इन यूएई अल-फुत्ताम की, स्टिल टू सी कि आगे ग्रोथ के नंबर्स क्या अचीव करेंगे, लेकिन अभी तक हमें ग्रोथ जो इनकी देखने को मिली है दैट्स मार्वलस। उस हवाले से कुछ मजीद बात भी करेंगे। What about Al-Futtaim performance till now, like over the last couple of years and categorically after the Great Recession of 2008?
Yes, we've seen pretty good growth actually as an automotive group. As you know, we're based in Dubai in the UAE, and our primary business is in Toyota. We also have Honda, we have Volvo, we have Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, and we're into construction equipment, and of course Al-Ghazi tractors in Pakistan. But we've seen strong growth in our market after the crash in late 2008, where the banks really just pulled back from auto loans. It was a shock to the system. But we have recovered very well. 2009 and now 2010, we've just said goodbye to in a record way. So we're seeing strong return back from the car buying public.
How would you define, how would you translate that great hit to auto sector because of this recession and of course the financial system and pulling out from the same sort of market?
Yes, it was somewhat of a shock because it happened almost you can almost time it. It happened in December 2008, and the banks just really pulled away from auto loans, and a regeneration of that activity had to take place throughout 2009. And when you consider that about 70% of our business is done through some financial instrument or other, it's a big hit. So the terms, the conditions, and the way the money was loaned to customers had to change. The banks came about a new world, and we've recovered. And 2010 was a very strong year.
How would you differentiate 2008 or 9 and 10?
Well, I think we saw a trough.
It was a V-turn?
It was a V-turn, yeah. I think we suffered a little bit in the first part of 2009, but really second half of that year, people kind of resorted out and got used to really what was a 50% drop. So the year of 2009 was a drop like a V-curve, as you just said. It just dropped and then came back, but only to about 50%. And then as we've seen 2010 come back, there's been a further 50% growth on top of that. So not quite back to the heady heights of 2008, but certainly not far off in terms of the curve. And I think by the time we finish this year, 2011, we'll have got back to those levels of 2008.
And specifically, if we may classify in luxury class and utility class, how would you differentiate?
Well, the market tends to be differentiated. Yeah, the luxury class, in fact, wasn't hit by the recession as hard as people may have thought. The luxury buyers were still there. There's still a wealthy group of people buying cars. And that segment stayed relatively stable. It was the more volume sectors that got hit. And our segment performance in terms of, particularly like Lexus, a vehicle like Lexus, the 4x4 vehicles, they were very, very strong, still are, and are still growing. So it was interesting that you may have thought the luxury sector got hit, but it didn't.
So you had major hit in utility sector?
Yeah, that volume utility segment really was the one that got the hit.
And what about your inventories at that time and now? How would you compare?
Our inventories now are very typical of a company being demand-led. We're very thin, actually. And, of course, the recent terrible events taking place in Japan have caused them to become even thinner as we eagerly await the news from the Japanese companies on the resumption of production. So we're gearing ourselves for a shortage of supply as we get to that middle part of the year. But I think knowing the Japanese, they will sort things out and then work very hard to get us back to where we should be.
You think it won't be affecting Al-Futtaim?
I think slightly. We've done some risk assessments. Remember that a company like Toyota has plants all over the world, and only 7 plants out of 20, I think it is, have been affected. And even there, plants themselves have not been hit. It's the suppliers, the tier 2, 3 suppliers, that we're just working out the effects of. So there will be an effect, but our information tells us we'll probably be back to full supply by about June time.
If I take BCG metrics, which model or which specific brand would you be considering in Star and would you be considering in cash cows?
Well, it's interesting that in these markets, the ubiquitous Land Cruiser, the Toyota Land Cruiser, is a very strong selling vehicle. It has such a reputation of quality, reliability, and fit for purpose in an environment which is one of the harshest environments in the world for automobiles, with the heat, the humidity, the dust, the sand, the usage. And people, we find, do take their vehicles into the desert. So it's so that's one vehicle that we know is very, very well.
You would consider it this vehicle in Stars?
Oh yeah. I mean,
and what about the cash cows?
Well, I think that's one of them too. I mean, it sells very well, and people. We always have a strong demand for the 4x4 offerings of Toyota, Lexus, Honda.
And what sort of competition is like in the same market you're getting out from Nabuda or from any other stakeholder?
The interesting rise that we see that the automobile industry, I think, is seeing globally is from the Koreans. We see Hyundai, Kia rising with their offerings. They have a little bit of a benefit of a weak currency versus the strong yen, but nonetheless they're making good vehicles and they're becoming very competitive. So we kind of watch the Koreans, but our market is still a dominant Japanese market.
You think banks would be supporting you more as far as the auto sector is concerned in future as well?
Yeah, clearly the banks now have realigned to the new conditions and are very supportive now. We have very high approval rates, and the banks reconfigured their approach to applications for loans. But now it's tightened up. It's a new world, and they're very, very supportive.
How would you ensure sustained growth towards Al-futtaim in future, in coming days?
Well, I think when we look at our position in terms of the UAE, we have almost 50% of the market across our brands. So our strength, our growth will come from diversification and from other markets. We see ourselves in Egypt, where we have Toyota and Honda. We have Honda in Oman and Qatar. We have Nissan and Suzuki Maruti down in Sri Lanka. And we have Volvo and Chery in Saudi Arabia. So concentrating on some of the other MENA markets, even though we see some turbulence in those markets at the moment, we see the long term very optimistic because of the population structures. You can see a market like Egypt, although going through some tough times at the moment, 80 million people, and as that population becomes more and more capable of buying products, we see the MENA market to be one of the powerhouses of the future.
Apart from UAE, which market geographically you feel that would be performing more towards your financials?
It's interesting because not many people would guess my answer. But the recent changes that we've seen in Sri Lanka have provided a market down there you cannot believe the strength of. Because,
that's pretty interesting.
Well, it is, because the 30-year-old war that had been raging down there finished last year. The government took some pretty unprecedented acts about lowering tariffs. They have a very stable system now. The president's been elected, and they've opened up the car market. And you see lots of sales of cars. You see lots of development in Sri Lanka, because this will interest people, I think. But it's right. You look at Sri Lanka for other reasons than cricket, but if you look at Sri Lanka, it's directly on a trade route between Africa and China. And as the Chinese are seeking to purchase more and more commodities from Africa, you see the opportunity for building ports and logistics in the south of the island.
Why don't you consider Pakistani market? 600,000 vehicles per annum is the demand in Pakistani market, as far as population that's growing as well. In South Asia, why you consider Sri Lanka in specific?
Well, it's just one of the markets we're in, you know. I mean, it's not every market you can be in with your with the franchises that you have. But I just think it's an interesting little development down there, which is worth watching.
And what about the performance of different lines of business? Used car is there. You are offering 3 years sales, service, and support as well.
Yeah.
What exactly the business line which is like coming up with a strong growth?
I think really the reliability and the maintenance costs, which are low for Japanese products, is still the same today. I know that Toyota had a lot of recalls and it made a lot of news over the last year, but still people love the reliability of their Toyota. I find that constantly. And so when you put together the inherent reliability, the low cost of maintenance, and the high residual values, that still is a wonderful offering in the car market today.
And what about the used car segment?
Yeah, the used car segment is strong at the moment, and I think that's a sign of a growing market, that people are still prepared to look at used cars. And I know we have a very good used car operation, which is seeing record sales. So there's a lot of people out there buying cars.
Where exactly you feel them like they are reflecting in your financials as far as used car segment is concerned, Automall is concerned?
Yeah, Automall used cars are always good because they give a buyer a different perspective. There is a market out there for people that want a late, low mileage used car. They like the fact that it's warranted by somebody like Al-futtaim. They get that new car feel and service, but at a used car rate. So it's a very, very strong market. And we cater to a very wide audience there, and it's very good for us because we can take a trade-in from a customer who comes in to buy a new car and put that car into Automotives and find another customer. So we kind of like viewing it that it's customers of vehicles for life. So whilst we sell them to the customer, we really think we're going to get them back, and we'll sell them to somebody else and keep the customers and keep the vehicles.
Retaining the customers either if it's a new car, if it's a used
it's whatever
car.
the customer wants.
Okay.
Whatever the customer.
And what about the growth? You think this 50% chunk would you be able to maintain it in future as well?
Well, I think you get to a point of diminishing marginal returns, especially when you've got 50% market share. So I think you naturally want to look for other franchise opportunities, other markets in this growing area of the world. So we're constantly on the lookout. We have a very strong base here in Pakistan with Al-Ghazi tractors, but it's my intention to get other franchises here and expand upon our very successful business.
We'll wish you all the best. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Lenhard, नाज़रीन हमारे साथ थे चेयरमैन Al-Ghazi ट्रैक्टर्स और Al-futtaim ऑटोमोबाइल्स यूएई का 50% स्टेक जिस तरह से ऑटो मार्केट का इनके पास है, उसके प्रेसिडेंट भी हैं, और ओवरऑल जिस तरह से पाकिस्तान में डाइवर्सिफिकेशन के हवाले से एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में फर्दर ऑप्शंस भी ट्राई करना चाह रहे हैं आने वाले दिनों में. लेट्स सी कि फर्दर हम फॉरेन डायरेक्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट जो है वो किस क्लस्टर में आते हुए और कितनी फैसिलिटेट होते हुए गवर्नमेंट की जानिब से देखेंगे. अब तक के लिए इतना ही. इजाज़त दीजिए. अल्लाह हाफ़िज़.